Alaikum. I hope you're all well and having a good day. So let's solve question number 14 from the year Jan 2024. This is the physics unit 1 question paper. So in the question they have said a child's slide has a vertical height of 1.7 meter. So this is the vertical height which is around 1.7 meter. And the child starts from rest at the top. So this is the position from where the child will start to slide and moves down the slide. The resistive forces acting on the child can be ignored, so we can ignore the resistive forces. We don't need to take this into account. So the question they have said is explain why the equations of motion should not be used to determine the maximum speed of the child. So the main question is why we cannot use the equations of motion. This is really important. You should consider the shape of the slide. So they have given us a hint that we have to take the shape of the slide into consideration. So let's solve and look at it. We all know if the slide is completely vertical, or it is not vertical, if it is flat, then the acceleration is constant. We all know that. And we all know the formula of the equations of motion, as there is no time given. So the formula of equations that we might use here is v square is u square plus 2as. This is the equations of motions formula that we should have used, but we cannot use this formula because the reason behind not being able to use this formula is this slide is not vertical. This slide is a curved slide. As the slide is curved, the acceleration is not constant. And one thing that we always need to make sure is that to be able to use the equations of motions, this acceleration need to be constant. And if the slide was flat like this, then we could have used this formula. But as the slide is not vertical, as it is up and down, as the shape of the slide is not vertical, they have said about the shape, so we cannot use this v square is equal to u square plus 2as formula. We have to use another formula, which is whenever something is a bit of in a height above the ground, it has a gravitational potential energy, and the gravitational potential energy here will be equal to the kinetic energy when it will be sliding down. So this gravitational potential energy is equals to this kinetic energy, and if we are able to find out this gravitational potential energy, we can say we have also found out the kinetic energy. And we all know the formula of kinetic energy is half mv square. So if we know the kinetic energy, then we can use that kinetic energy to find out the velocity. So we cannot use these equations of motion formula to find out the velocity in this scenario. We have to find out the kinetic energy and then use that kinetic energy to use this velocity. So let's go and write it down here in our own words. The answer of this question will be, as we all know, the gradient or the steepness, you can use any of them, steepness of this slide, the gradient of the steepness of this slide varies, as it is not constant, actually. The gradient or steepness of the slide varies. This is our point number 1, and the point number 2 will be, the acceleration of the child also varies. So we are done with our 2 points, and the third point will be the equations of motion requires the acceleration to be constant. So we are done with this question. We have given 3 points for 3 marks. So let's go and focus on question number on the next question. In the next part of the question, they have said the child has a mass of 24 kg and they have asked us to find out the maximum speed. So we have told you previously that in order to find out the maximum speed, we have to find out the kinetic energy in this situation, as they have not given us the chance to use the equations of motion. So we all know when a child is at the top, it has a gravitational potential energy, and this gravitational potential energy is equals to this gravitational potential energy at the top. The gravitational potential energy at the top is going to be equal to the kinetic energy at the bottom. So we can say kinetic energy at the bottom, or kinetic energy here. So we can find out this gravitational potential energy, as we all know the mass and we all know the gravity is 9.81, and this height is also known. So we can use it to find out the gravitational potential energy, which is going to be mg. Sorry, this gravitational potential energy is going to be mgh, which is 24 into 9.81 into this 1.7. So the answer will be 400 joule. We all know this gravitational potential energy is equals to the kinetic energy. So we can say the kinetic energy is 400 joule is equals to the formula of kinetic energy, half mv square. And this mass, we all know that half into 24 into v square is equals to 400. So this v square will be equal to 2 into 400 divided by 24, and the value of the v will be 5.77 ms minus 1. So we're done with question number B. So let's move forward and solve the question number B now. In the next part of the question, they have said, in the next part of the question, they have asked us, two slides x and y have the same height. So this x and this y has the same height. The height is similar. Slide x is longer than slide y. So this slide is longer than the y slide. This x slide is longer than the xy, then the y slide, then this slide. Okay, the child moves from rest down slide x and reaches a maximum velocity x. So here, where the kinetic energy is equals to half mv square, here this velocity is going to be max. This velocity is max, this velocity. The second child moves from rest down to slide 1, reaches a maximum velocity vy, and here the kinetic energy is going to be half mv square. This is also our maximum velocity. We all know here it has a gp and here it has a kinetic energy, and this kinetic energy is the v max. They have said the child on slide y has a greater mass, so the greater mass than the child x. So this child y has a greater mass. The mass of y is greater than the x. Okay, they have asked us the resistive force on the both the children can be ignored. Explain why vx compares with vy. So they have asked us to compare the velocity of the child x and the velocity of the child y. They have especially mentioned about that the slide y has a greater mass than the slide x. This is the thing they had given us a slight hint regarding how the answer is going to be. So let's go and find it out. We all know the gp right here is going to be equal to this kinetic energy. This gp right at the top is going to be equal to the kinetic energy at the bottom. So we can say E grav is equals to the kinetic energy, and we have to write a formula: mass into gravity into height is equals to half mv square. So we know that this gravitational potential energy E grav is equals to half mv square, and we can remove this mass and this mass. So we are left with gh is equals to half v square, and if you subject this v as we have been asked to find out the v, this will be this v is equals to root over 2g into del h. So we can say we have been asked to find out 3 marks. So this was our point 1 and this is our point 2, and we have to give another point that this point is, as they have told us about the mass, as this formula to find out the velocity doesn't require any mass, as the masses gets cancelled up, we can say the velocity doesn't depend upon the mass. The velocity doesn't depend upon the mass. The velocity only depends upon this height, because this gravity is also constant. So we can go and write it down, that we can write the point number 1, the maximum velocity doesn't depend upon the mass of child, it only depends on the height. So this was our point number 1, this was our point number 2, and this was our point number 3, and it's an additional point that I have given, though they have asked us to give only 3 points, but I have given you one additional point, so that you never know, maybe in your exam day they may ask the same question with 4 marks given on it, so we have to write another point. So I have given you another point which you can have in your mind, so that you can answer the same question in a different way as well. And we're done with this 40 number question. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.